So now we get to talk about what needs to happen at the jurisdictional level, state, county, and city. Of course, Commissioner Parks is here. He's been visionary and really pushing Lake County to achieve Lake County's goals around sustainability and connectivity. And then Tim Maslow, as the Community Development Director, has been leading the planning efforts at the City of Groveland to establish smart growth and conservation strategies so that the work that the county's doing and that the city's doing blends together. And guess what that leads to? That leads to the broader regional connections that then tie into our keynote speaker's topic around the Florida Wildlife Corridor. So we're going to talk about the macro a little bit, things that have to happen again at the jurisdictional level, the legislation and codes that need to be in place to help facilitate a lot of the things that we're talking about. And then we're also going to dial down to the micro towards the end of the discussion, because you also need to have initiatives happening on the city level and the county level that people can see and touch, but also the codes that support those things. So we'll hear a lot about that. So a little bit conversational, but we are going to be flipping through some slides as well. So my first question is, Sean and Tim, let's chat about the efforts that both Groveland and Lake County are doing to strengthen the larger scale connectivity initiatives. Sean, perhaps you can go first.
Sure, okay. Well, good morning. It's a beautiful day in Lake County in Florida, isn't it? Get excited, right? I really appreciate all of you being here. I do hold you all in high esteem. Very much appreciate, as in my position, both professionally, I kind of operate in your world a little bit, but then also as an elected official, really appreciate having data and putting data to good use for policies. And
I think we can go
okay.
Click down.
Yeah.
Or up. There we go.
Yeah. So it's just, let me start by saying there's been a lot of successes here in Lake County of recent, and one as a Central Florida native, having grown up and being very concerned about growing up in the 80s, I'm not going to give my age away, but seeing the changes in Florida and where we are now is very concerning, and as obviously constituents coming to me with these big issues, and the city of Groveland as well. We have some successes in Lake County, some things to be very proud of, and I'm going to tie this together, I promise, with what you're doing here. But you know, we had a countywide conservation referendum that passed recently by 80% of the voters in Lake County. Very conservative county, by the way. 80% of the voters elected for a $50 billion bond because to pursue easements and land acquisition of fee simple properties for conservation, also for lands that could be used as trails. Very big success, 80%, imagine that. I was a part of that. I think we probably could have got up to 90% if we really pushed it even more. We're starting to see this awareness of the Florida Wildlife Corridor, not just say starting to, the Florida Wildlife Corridor in Lake County now, the awareness and at least knowledge of it is amazing. It was a big part of our countywide conservation strategy, was this money would go to support the Florida Wildlife Corridor. So there's an awareness there as well. There is an acquisition committee, and I'm just going to show you this. This will show you how successful some things that are happening in Lake County. This land acquisition committee that we, the county commissioners, will set up, made up of citizens to steer the process of buying those lands and partnering with St. Johns River Water Management District or DEP or whoever, the land trust. Had over 40 applicants. This is the literal binder that I have to make a decision on next week, 2 weeks, to appoint people to that board. We had 40 applicants. I have a hard time getting 1 or 2 applicants to get on the county planning and zoning board. So this is a thick book. This shows that people are really, really interested right now. So to keep moving along here, because I know I'm standing in the way of lunch, as they say. I want to be respectful because Tim's got a lot of great things to talk about. So let's get into that big level, high level again, in policy, and again how it's connected to what you're doing here. I will say that I think a challenge is going to be, just right up front, is we got the Florida Wildlife Corridor, we got this land acquisition committee set up. There's this great awareness that's there, but then there's still people that kind of think, well, what is it? Why should you really be concerned about what happens at the landscape level in my yard, or even the 15-foot buffers, or the what's maybe the park that's down the street? And what we're trying to do, and I think this is the challenge and we're all here for, is showing that it's going to be great when we get this $50 million and all this additional monies, and we're going to have all these corridors protected. And they're only going to be, in the long term, in my opinion, they're only going to be mediocre. I mean, we're going to have, they're not going to be as good as they could be, in a sense. I'm being very qualitative there. But if what happens in the built environment doesn't support that, the ecological services. So that's the challenge that we're here facing, and I will be very candid, that is a big challenge in Lake County. So the support of the conservation corridors and everything is one thing, but you also got the you ain't going to tell me what to do in my yard mentality as well. So we got to get there. I'm going to go through this sort of quick. We have the money now, but what do we use that's fact-based, that's science-based, and how to spend that money? We have the countywide conservation strategy. We used Dr. Jason Evans, led the effort with us, along with the East Central Florida Planning Council. Very fact-based process, used the Mark Sand model, some of you are aware of that. Using these 5 key guiding principles that you all see. I've had this slide up now, I'm not going to read through everything. With these, focusing on these environmental features, things like there's 180 different key species in Lake County that we need to focus on. So where are those, and putting that in the Mark Sand model. The groundwater recharge, of course, water is a big issue. Sustainable forestry, which was pretty interesting for us. We do have some sustainable forestry in Lake County. So putting all that in that Mark Sand model, using the political term, and it just spits this nice map out for me, the county commission, to look at that beautiful map and say, this is where we use that money. We should be steering, and our residents that are on this committee here will hopefully guide us in making good policy decisions to where we can go with make the best use of the dollars. What also came out of that, which is very important, is the city-county approach that we're going to talk about here in a minute. Transfer development rights program, so we're going to be looking at that at the Lake County now. That was something that came out of the countywide conservation strategy and effort, but the next step is to look at TDRs, and eyes do roll sometimes when I talk about TDRs, transfer development rights, because most people think they don't work. In Lake County, we're going to make them work. Not everybody's going to have to use them. It's going to be voluntary, but we're going to do a program that I think is going to, will work for us as well.
Hey, Sean,
Yes.
can you talk a little bit more about TDRs and what that means?
Okay, yeah. Some probably know this, but we have, and this maybe kind of dovetails into the conversation about concern among our residents about the rural areas. So we have lands that maybe are identified on the Mark Sand model, or also could be in our rural conservation, our rural lands overlay or land use, or agricultural lands. So what we want to do is take the current maximum, or the current allocated entitlements, meaning what's already out there, the total entitlements for residential use development within all of Lake County. Imagine calculating that number, and essentially trying to support the policy of, we don't really need to give an increase in density or more units and to bring that into Lake County. But what we need to do is maybe find a way to incentivize transferring those residential units to the more urban areas, the cities, where the density is a little more appropriate for that.
Right.
Protect our rural lands, protect our agricultural lands. I know a lot of folks in agriculture I've talked to personally that are looking for something that works. Maybe we combine this with the Rural and Family Lands Protection Act money as well. So I think that's how all that works together. But you got to have the Transfer Development Rights Program in place. It has to work, and all 14 cities in Lake County and the county have to agree on it and use it. Just a small little challenge, right? But we're going to do it. I'm positive to a flaw sometimes, if you haven't noticed that. But
you have at least one willing partner with Groveland.
You do,
at least
yes. Yeah, Groveland is incredible through all this. I'm going to let you tout all that and support you on that. Conservation subdivisions, creation of blueways. Not just greenways, but blueways. This is something pretty cool. With 1,400 named lakes in Lake County, it's pretty neat when you can kayak, all the way up to the Harris Chain from Claremont. I guess you might have to go over one of those dams, but we're working on that. We do have routes, we do have blueways, and it's not just identify a blueway on a map. This would be a pretty cool place to kayak or boat, but it's working with the cities so that there's amenities there, so that people actually use it a little more, and they're coming from other places and spending money in Lake County too, by the way. And then the fee simple acquisition and conservation easements that I mentioned before. The JPAs, if any of my Lake County peeps in here, they get eyes roll over when I keep talking. I bring in JPAs into every conversation almost, joint planning agreements. Very important for us in Lake County. Just going to get a little passionate here right now. You can't have 14 cities and a county all operating in silos, not really communicating very well on how to address the growth issues, even simple things like, is this an area we should annex in or not? We had some older JPAs, joint planning agreements, that have sort of worked, but if we're going to have an effective strategy in Lake County and not be another suburb to Orlando, as we say, we have to do this together, and there has to be a very intentional joint planning process. All the cities should adopt a countywide conservation strategy so that right up front through the development process, they're looking at that Mark Sand model and they know. Or they're looking at shared standards and buffering to connect the buffers to the larger corridors and protected areas as well. Strong Towns Initiative, that's the sort of fiscal focus. You do all these subdivisions and the same old that we're seeing, and we all want to see us go in a different direction, has a fiscal cost to the city and the county. More, meaning after 25 years, generally speaking, with a lot of subdivisions, there is a greater cost to provide the service than it actually is collected in tax dollars. Generally, we have data, we're gathering data on that as well. So that's a very big part of this process. And then our rural conservation subdivision design standards, it's sort of new. We only have one application in place right now, and we've politely put them on hold for a little while because the concept plan wasn't quite there yet. That's an ongoing case, so that's about all I'm going to say with that one. And then, of course, this is just touting the joint planning area visioning. Again, that's going to be so important for us. I've given you sort of a status report already, so I'm going to breeze through these slides a little bit. We're still working on the city-county partnership through the JPAs. On June 30th, we're going to have a very big meeting with all 14 cities and the county to hopefully there'll be a success. I'm going to let Tim say this, with at least one JPA by then, I predict, a new JPA. But we really kind of want to get everybody in the room and have an uncomfortable discussion again that we need to do this with the cities and the county. And I'm willing to make sacrifices as well from the county side of what we need to do. It's sort of strategically, being quite honest with just us, don't tell anybody I'm saying this, but it's sort of strategically after June 2nd, we're having a big workshop on charter county, potentially the county going charter to address some of these conservation issues is how it starts. But I think we want to have a very good, candid discussion with the cities on that and perhaps go down the route of doing joint planning agreements. I think we could get a lot of this addressed, both at the built environment level and then the, where we're going regionally with the Corridors Connect. So I've gone through this. I've covered a lot of this. So we're going to get you, I feel like I'm behind a little bit, like I'm taking too much time, so I don't want to.
I think you're okay.
Take your time.
Okay. This is the Blue Way Guide. So we're serious about this. You can see, as I mentioned before, they're not just little blue lines on a map. This might be a good lake. By the way, Lake Apopka is a Blue Way. You probably want to have a little extra bigger kayak. We have a couple 14-foot gators, they say, that are, I'm not sure they're that big, but they're really big. So yeah, you'll see that this is a very unique, something unique for us to have Blue Ways. I don't know if we're the only county, but we're certainly one of the few, and we're going to market that. And Groveland's certainly taken advantage of that. This is just an example. So we actually have this digitally and paper copies as well. For those of you, my friends in the room here that are from out of the county, can come in and do a Blue Way and spend some money. Our trail plan, we're very passionate about our trail plan, master plan. I think all but maybe one city has bought into this, and even the one that hasn't agrees with it, that just maybe haven't signed it yet. We'll keep working on them. But this is part of that development process where if development does come in, we say, hey, city X, we have the countywide trail plan. Let's work they need to require the right-of-way for the trail, or they need to, help us accomplish this missing link. That's how we do that. If we do the JPAs, that makes that even stronger and more likely that extensive trail network is going to get done, because I think it's probably $80 or $90 million just to build what we want in trails. And Tim and I meet out on trails. I'm running that way. He's running from Groveland. I'm running to Groveland on the trail. Yeah, we do actually. A lot of Saturdays we'll see.
It's a magical moment on those Saturday mornings when that happens.
Yeah.
So Tim,
We just kind of wink at each other.
That's a good transition. I'm going to hand it off on the trail to you.
You hand him the,
Yes.
The
yeah. So
baton.
Tim, on the Groveland side, what are you doing
Yes, Chris.
more at the planning level to kind of, work with Lake County and within Groveland itself?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me, Chris and Commissioner. I think this is maybe 3 or 4 or 5 times we've been on the same panel now, and I feel like we're a unified team at this point. So I always appreciate the opportunity to be on stage and talk collectively about our shared values and what the county's doing and what the city's doing. I think there's a lot of alignment there. I asked Chris, is this all landscape architects? And I know it's not. I see some folks who are residents in the area, even some attorneys here. I know there's some LAs and probably some planners in different disciplines. I think the common thread is we're all here to create great places. And when I think about great places, I've been with Groveland now, I'm happy to say, about 6 years this week. I was with Orange County for 5 years before that, Winter Park for 5 years before that. But the two common threads are typically policies, but then also people. And I want to talk a little bit about both. There's a lot that we've done in terms of policy that we'll get into. The city's written a new strategic plan. Already 3 years ago, we adopted that. We're going to talk about our 3-year review, which we're already doing with our mayor and our committee. We adopted a form-based code prior to that, a new future land use element. Those were wholesale changes. But to me, it's really the people that keep the job interesting, and it's kind of the secret sauce, if you will, to our success. That starts with our city manager, who's sitting in the back, Mike Hine. I think he's quietly built a lot of alliances, and then also the culture at the city has changed significantly, and I think he's at the forefront of that. I think the relationships that we have with, obviously, Commissioner Parks and the county, and some exciting things that we're working on with that. Chris, you and the Dix Hite team, there's a lot that we've been able to achieve in terms of landscape coding and specific, tangible projects like the cemetery and some of our streetscape improvements. You talk about the Cherry Lake Tree Farm and Tim and Chloe and a relationship with them. We're constantly talking with them. They're involved in our strategic planning committee. And I even remember like the first week I was out here in Groveland, and we were having a little lunch and learn with the group. And I remember, wanting to foster that relationship really quickly because I saw a lot of common thread there. But we have a lot of, other key relationships with landscape nurseries and different planning organizations. And, our residents, both unincorporated county residents in our area, are very involved, and also incorporated, of course. But they keep our culture kind of moving. And Groveland's also distinct in the sense that we're kind of, in the last 5 to 6 years, we're kind of working with 2 taglines. If you come out to Groveland, you'll see a lot of, tracked subdivisions built by, the KB Homes and DR Hortons, and nothing, against them. But don't judge us on that, please, because a lot of that comes from the city's previous tagline of watch us grow. And Groveland, in the past was, south of the Palatka area, the Taylorville, Platte, and our kind of downtown area, along State Road 50 corridor. And they made an intentional decision that we wanted to grow. We wanted to expand up to Howland Hills and take advantage of the turnpike. And they went through a series of rezonings. They wanted rooftops to get commercial. When I got to the city, our tagline was City with Natural Charm. And everything that I've done since then, I always think, whether it's a regulatory update or a new project or, a new application that we have come in, how can this relate to natural charm? And, we've gone through that process of writing these codes. The strategic plan, I want to read to everybody. The mission of the city is an ecosystem intentionally connecting safety, service, and innovation to support a vibrant, welcoming community with natural charm. So again, natural charm is in our mission statement. Our vision is Groveland is a collection of towns, villages, and hamlets interweaving a diversity of people into an eco-agrarian landscape. And we'll talk a little bit about what eco-agrarian means. Our values are intentionality, connectivity, vitality, knowledge, and heart. So this slide is really important because it shows that map. When it was the city, watch us grow, they expanded the utility service area. This is about 34,000 acres or so. And one of the first things we did, the city, in the first few months, and it was really trying to take our future land use map, and we had something like 30-some categories between both the city and the county. And instead of just doing it for the city limits, we actually did this joint vision map, which kind of, introduced the conversation around that JPA. We started with the end in mind. Assuming that we just annexed everything, what do we want it to be? And our city manager also had this goal of, what if we save 50% of our land as open space? Not a lot of cities I know have, touted that goal and said we want to do that. It's pretty ambitious. We started mapping it, and if you look at both of our conservation and agriculture, conservation is about 30%, agriculture is close to 20%. We're just shy of that 50% mark. We're like 49 point something, so we're like on the cusp, and I'm optimistic we're going to meet that here pretty soon. But this also simplifies things, and all that green that you see. It's one thing, saving it, but you also have to provide some value to it, or else the people, the culture, they're not going to value it and want to save it for years down the road, right? So our concept is, how do we partner with the county on the Palatka Blueway and have some passive recreation, have some conservation parks, but then also the agriculture, the nature of development right now is Central Florida is one of the hottest places to develop in the world. And we have residential builders dangling multi-million-dollar checks in front of, old retired farmers every day. And their option is, do we easily cash out, or do we pass this down to your kids? Most kids don't, younger generation don't want to farm anymore, although I do see some examples of people wanting to continue that. But how could we work with those families? How could we try to, partner with the county on a TDR scenario even, and saying, hey, we get that you have entitlements here, but we want to save this as open space. We want to save this as agriculture. This is that Palatka Blueway. And again, this goes back to relationships and people. Tim Sallin and Chloe with Cherry Lake Tree Farm, they really introduced us to this concept of, we get that you have the 50% goal, but what if we really focus in and prioritize the Palatka Blueway? And it's so critical to our environment. It's one of our, it's really the spinal cord for conservation in the city, if you think about it, because it could link all the way from the Green Swamp area of critical state concern all the way up to, the Harris chain of lakes, which is really key. And I'm really proud that, Andrew Landis, our conservation group, we have, set out to save this area. Just in less than 2 years, we took 1,800 acres roughly, and we've purchased and conserved about half of that, 900 acres already. Much of that from the Arnold brothers. We worked out a great deal with them. Also, Brett Jones in the audience, he was representing the Palisades, and we were able to get some land for cheap on that. So we've developed a really, nice sense of momentum, and that leads us into Wilson Island. Wilson Island is very interesting. Let's see if I have a weight up point.
I think so.
Do you know, Chris? Is there a pointer?
Yeah, I
there?
think you can point, but I'm not sure how.
Okay.
Actually.
Here, you want me to point?
Maybe I could jump now.
They said bottom button.
There's a property, Wilson Island, to the very top right there. And that's really, when you look at all these properties, a lot of them are wetland, a lot of them are agriculture without the entitlements. This property specifically is 175 acres. It has one of our new village designations, and it's entitled for 181 units. And when we think about entitlements and transfer development rights, it's a great opportunity to make that, really a sending area. And sending area means is we want to partner with the developers, the property owners, take their entitlements, send them somewhere else in the county or the city. They have a high price tag, looking at $18 million actually for the property.
Wow.
So our goal is to, again, partnerships. City
it's a
doesn't
beautiful
have a
property.
huge budget. We're still a small town with ambitious goals. So our partnership with the county and the state hopefully will, provide some fruit from that, much like the Hiawatha Preserve in Claremont. That's kind of like our model for the area.
Interestingly enough, the paddle tour that's happening tomorrow morning is going to paddle past Wilson Island. So
There you go.
yeah, so those of you that are going to be a part of that, you'll get to see exactly what Tim's talking about.
It is beautiful.
The landscape. It's a really unique ridge, oak-covered ridge, highland, and a beautiful pocket.
It's gorgeous. And when you think about, the natural environment and conservation, I think about, not only the nature component, but also the economics and quality of life and property values. And when you think about the highest property values in Central Florida, you think, the Windermere, Butler chain of lakes, Winter Park chain of lakes. Groveland has that opportunity. Groveland with the Watch Us Grow kind of movement was mostly looking at, a lot of the drive till you qualify kind of economics of build the tract homes and the people come out. But, our goal is a much higher calling than that and trying to create value from, not only tax revenue basis, which is important, but also a quality of life and create, really great communities and places that people love. This is kind of dovetailed with, of course, we're working on the landscape code update with Chris and her team, but also an agrarian code update. So how do we take advantage of all that agricultural property? This is kind of interesting. Our mayor is a big farmer in the city. He's got a 100-acre orange grove that he's converted to an olive farm. And, we kind of read in the regulations as we were combing through them is you can't even have chickens or farm animals anywhere in the city, even if it's agriculture. So that was kind of like a red flag to say, well, we're not aligned, right? If you have a strategic plan, you should make sure that your policies and your code standards are aligned with those values. So we started the process of working on not just saying that you could have backyard chickens, but throughout the transect, from natural to agriculture to neighborhoods, kind of suburban scale up to urban and mixed-use areas, what are those agricultural uses that we could permit and kind of go above and beyond just backyard chickens? Our whole code is predicated on the transect. It's, again, the natural charm eco-agrarian area is our T1 conservation, our T2 agriculture. That's that 50% of the city that we're trying to save. And then as you kind of step up, you're taking, you're looking at context in terms of, lot sizes and density and how streets are designed. And, we'll work with Chris and her team in terms of how landscape standards fit in with this kind of context. But really throughout the whole, even in the mixed use areas, you want to think about natural charm, you want to think about conservation and nature. And to me, great places are, the right balance between the physical built environment and the natural environment. And there's just different, that balance is just different based on the context. But this agricultural code, I'm really excited about that. We're anticipating having this adopted by council in summer, probably taking to P&Z, I believe, in June. We're just waiting on our legal review for that.
Mm-hmm.
Did you want to get into this yet? Or
Yeah, I'd love for you to talk about and
okay.
share this unique initiative and
so this
what
is
makes
another
Groveland
thing where
special.
we started our code update back in 2020. We adopted dark sky lighting requirements, but it was really, this is a grassroots effort in Groveland. Marty Proctor, who's one of our unincorporated residents, he gets a lot of credit for this. It wasn't necessarily driven by staff, but staff led by Andrew Landis has been working tirelessly to achieve this certification. We're the first one, not only in the state to achieve it, but the first one really in the southeast of the country. So we've gotten a lot of attention for it, and to me, again, it goes back to, how are you planning for natural charm? We talk a lot about, the land, and then you also think about water, but the sky is also part of the experience. It's part of place. Usually that's kind of left out, but if you go out to Lake County, which their brand is real Florida, real close, ours is natural charm. A lot of similarities there, but we want Groveland to be a place where when people come out, they could experience those dark skies. And even with our growth, making sure that their lighting is up to speed and meeting those standards so we could preserve that. It's not going to be like you're going out to, a national park, miles away from civilization to be able to see it, but what you see now is our goal is to preserve that, even though we're growing. Again, back to partnerships. The Cherry Lake Tree Farm, we partner with them on an annual basis. We had our last star party there, again at the tree farm, just about a month ago or so, and it's the most attended event that we have in the city. We're not event planners, my department, but we kind of get stuck doing that to a certain extent, and but the people seem to love it. It's not just Groveland residents. This is bringing people really throughout the state coming as a destination. And it's put Groveland on the map where, if you Googled Groveland 5 years ago, you probably would have been getting, different things about some of our history and a little bit of controversy there. But now with that natural charm branding and those relationships and that persistence, now you're seeing a different side of Groveland. You're kind of rewriting history, and we're transitioning in the future, and it all goes back to that natural charm concept. This is a picture taken from Marty Proctor's backyard on his dock along the lake. I think it's Lake Emma or Lake Lucy, I forget, but this is, on a good night, this is the kind of view that we have in Groveland. And we've got over 20,000 residential units that are entitled in Groveland. We're trying to save 50%, but we're also trying to save that kind of view that you see on that slide there.
Nice. Thanks, Tim. So, it's pretty cool. So back to how at the county level and at the city level, you all might coordinate, especially staying at the macro and speaking to, initiatives like the Florida Wildlife Corridor. Can you share a little bit about perhaps the Lake County Conservation Council, how that works, how that collaboration actively works?
Well, I'll just jump in and say, here we go, that the collaboration is obviously key for all this to happen. Starts with the cities. So this will maybe be the third or fourth time I've said JPAs. It's going to be very important to have joint planning agreements enacted between governments. Groveland will be the first one, as my prediction is.
May 5th, the city will adopt it.
Yes.
We're hopeful that the county adopts shortly after.
We will.
Nice.
At least I will vote that way.
We know it.
Yes. So That's key. So it's going to start there from sort of the government side, but to the other organizations, there's some great organizations in the room that I see, but like Thousands Friends of Florida
Yep.
has been incredible for us, both on we have a big concern right now about loss of ag lands. I think I mentioned that earlier. They've got a lot of data that could be helpful for us to address that issue to our constituents. But also from the beginning, sitting in a roundtable setting in Leesburg in 2022 in February, they were with us from day one. The Florida Wildlife Corridor Foundation and the involvement with them and coming in and helping us educate and supplement some of our presentations is going to be key. We do have a couple of great local organizations like the one that you mentioned, of course, and that are also going to be helpful. It's going to start even down, for me, I look at it as even your getting down to like the Kiwanis and Rotary clubs and having them get engaged and doing presentations is going to take a lot of work to promote this collaboration that is so much needed. And just one other maybe a little side to that, I think an issue with the JPAs is, so we got dark sky, this designation, which is incredible. We can put that in our JPA between the county and the city, so that in the unincorporated parts of the county around Groveland, we would use their standard. Because that's the other sticking point with JPAs, is some cities, they like, well, I don't want the county to tell me what to do, and the county says, well, we don't like their standard. But I think we're trying to find some common standards, and this is one I believe, as well as the landscaping, we are working, I did not mention this earlier, we are looking on a new countywide landscaping code for new subdivisions. I know there'll be some concern about, will this apply to my 5-acre lot or my existing lot, infill? It does not. We're going to start with new subdivisions in unincorporated Lake County, but perhaps there's some commonality in the JPAs that we could do between the city and the county on that. So,
Great.
long way for me to say that having the local organizations is going to be key to trust as we go into partnering with using that $50 million, which I hope turns into like $200 million by the time you partner, maybe get some big bang for your buck with easements, things like that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Chris, is it okay if I go back to that one slide
Sure.
with our map?
Do what you want.
Okay. I just
Of
want to
course.
speak to this. So, most of the green that you see is unincorporated Lake County, where we have just a little over 50% of our utility service area that's incorporated in city limits. That demonstrates the importance of why a JPA is so important to us. It's one thing for the city to say we want to save the 50%, but if the county goes off and starts approving, we're going to rezone this agriculture to a residential subdivision, or we're going to do that, say near the Fort Commerce Park. Now we're looking at moving in the opposite direction, both, toward our conservation goals, but then also in terms of compatibility of land uses. So it's really critical that we have that joint planning agreement, or else this vision that Groveland has for that whole utility service area doesn't happen. The other point is, the dark sky lighting, it's a nice, catchy thing. It's celebrated. It's exciting. Most people seem to appreciate it and like it, but, we got Gabby on our staff. We're a small team. We are a very, small staff. We look at these lighting reviews and scrutinize to a very high extent, and these standards are not easy to achieve. County's a little bit bigger. I would see a huge win, Commissioner, if the county was able to at least adopt the dark sky lighting standards within our service area. And then you start, you get some case studies, you work incrementally, you start small, and then you celebrate those successes. And I think it's only a matter of time that expands out to the rest of the county, and that's really our goal, is that this becomes, the city starts it, but it becomes really a Lake County, initiative at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But that explains, that just those two components, conservation and the dark sky lighting, without that joint planning agreement, without those relationships, you just can't achieve something that's greater than yourself.
And I'll just say real quick that I think, obviously you get it, and I'm supportive of everything you've just said. And builders that are in the room, developers, the conservation code, the conservation subdivision criteria that we have in the county does require the 50% open space. I still think there's some things that through the JPA process that you have some great codes that maybe we could do in this area. But from the and I'm not a builder, so they may disagree with this, but just from what I know, that's the clustering of homes, and the lot sizes do become smaller, but you do get your open space. And I'm talking about in a density neutral situation. The density is the same pre-subdivision code, conservation subdivision code versus what we have now. This is just clustering. There's still some reluctance to that. I'm just being candid with you. We do get I don't like the 50-foot lots or the smaller lots or the alley loaded, there's some resistance to that, just some sort of confusion with it being tract homes, and it's not. There's some, I know there's some examples where that's very profitable and people are seeking that. And that's a challenge that's going to occur in the JPAs between us and some of the cities, not probably so much you, but some of the other cities as well.
Well, yeah, the other thing there is it provides predictability, not only to the residents, because the residents who live here, they want to know, what's going to happen in my backyard, whether it be tomorrow or 5 or 10 years down the future. They want to see that predictable vision to know what they're buying into. It's going to be sustained in terms of quality of life and then also the economic side. But, think about if anyone's a builder or developer in the room, you know the struggles, even when you have a quote-unquote easy project, there's a lot of time and money and stress that goes into that application. Having those joint planning agreements and having those maps, that gives predictability also to those builders and developers, so they're not taking on too much risk. From our perspective, we want to be very vocal with our vision and not have surprises to applicants. They spend millions of dollars in 6 to 12 months of time, and then they're surprised that they don't get approved. So we like to give them that vision at the forefront, and that joint planning agreement kind of helps them in terms of reducing the amount of speculative investments they make.
Awesome. So at a high level, let's dial down to the micro and just kind of chat a little bit about the key initiatives that each of y'all are doing on the code level, as well as maybe mention a few of the special projects that folks can maybe keep their eyes on in the future. I think we have 5 minutes left to kind of close out the conversation. Okay. So, Tim, maybe talk about a few of the actual physical projects that have been installed where you're experimenting with more native forward landscapes. I know there's a few out there that people can perhaps take a look at.
Well, if you're driving down State Road 50, you'll see Broad Street's been re-landscaped. That's all native landscaping. A lot of time, a lot of scrutiny went into that. Chris is involved, both in the downtown area, but then also east as you get closer to Claremont. We have the wildflower median, which, that evolved in a different way than I expected, to be honest. I expected we would just seed bomb and do it cheap and quickly. It ended up being a little bit more complex than that. And apparently the seeds aren't as prevalent as they used to be, and took a little bit more time, but I'm happy with the result. And it's kind of like a test. One of the good things when you don't have enough money to do too much, you could start small, see what works, what doesn't, learn from it, and then you kind of improve going forward. I feel like there's so many projects. We had the tour of the cemetery yesterday with Chief Carroll, right? That's really an incredible story. I mean, if anyone got to see that tour, again, that goes with relationships. And sometimes we start these really ambitious projects without a timeline, without a budget, and maybe you get a few bucks here and there, but we really rely on those partnerships and those grants. And there's just too many organizations to even list. I'll forget somebody, so I don't want to name one. But without those relationships, that project wouldn't have happened. We have Cherry Lake Park, which is going up, which our Parks Director, Mike Walker, has just done a phenomenal job with. Gaffney Park, which is close to the Plot La Caja. That's kicking off this year in terms of a renovated park. The South Lake Regional Park, which again is another partnership with the county that wouldn't be possible without that partnership. That's 140 acres. And again, that's going to be something that will be a little bit more incremental, and who knows, maybe the end result is different from what was initially planned. Maybe there's an eco-agrarian kind of spin to it, at least on the bottom half of it. There's a lot of physical projects. The State Road 50 realignment is going to be under construction next summer. So we're really excited to start, planning Broad and Orange and taking it to the next level, and, creating those trail-oriented kind of main streets that you see in some of the other more successful cities. Groveland will be like that. It will take about 5 to 10 years. I like to be honest with everybody. It's going to feel like a construction site really in the next 5 years, but we do have Avalon Park now under contract, at least for about 20 developable acres in the downtown. So people are beginning to notice. Developers who have shared values are taking interest. They've invested time, they've invested money, and we're going to start to see this kind of mixed-use, natural charm development unfold in Groveland. Rainwood, Cypress Bluff, those are 2 new villages. If you haven't been to Rainwood, up on Wilson Lake Parkway next to Trilogy, that has just started, and I'm already really impressed with what I've seen so far in terms of enhanced tree canopy saving, native landscaping, diversity of housing styles and architectural types, conservation included in it. There's really so much. We also have a comp plan evaluation and appraisal report that we're going to be really focusing on infrastructure and services in tandem with the development to make sure that we're doing better in those areas. That comes from listening to our constituents. I'm also a resident of Groveland too, so I know firsthand, there's a lot of growth, but what are we going to do about the transportation? How do we become more intentional in those areas? And as you know, we're looking forward to adopting the landscape code update.
Yep, that'll be rolling out pretty soon.
And that's going to be part of this. There's a conservation large-scale macro that we're partnering with the county, but drilling down to smaller scale within neighborhoods and within yards. How do we create this unified native landscape so that it really provides that wildlife connectivity? And I think when you see areas that have done a great job of that, especially on the 30A corridor with some of those new urbanist communities, Groveland, really in the next 5 to 10 years, there's going to be a lot to show, and we're excited about it.
Yeah, that's exciting. And Sean, maybe close us
I'll
out
just keep
in
it real
20
quick.
seconds.
I will keep it very quick.
And then we can eat.
I will keep it very quick and say, first, this afternoon or this weekend, you should go out to the Green Mountain Scenic Overlook on County Road 455 and see what a great project the county has done. It's in an area called Ferndale, the Ferndale Rural Protection Area. We were successful this past fall, the county commission, with some local efforts to get that area preserved as a rural designation for the next 25 years. So we're looking at some corridor identification, secondary corridor identification to that area. Very quickly, too, Wellness Way is an example.
Yes.
Wellness Way was all citrus grove. We used to be all citrus, had entitlements ranging from 2 to 4 to 5 units per acre. It's now been, we very, very quickly here, I'll tell you that we put together a plan. It's taken about 10 years to make a plan that makes sense. And just to give you, for instance, kind of tied into what we're doing today, we have the roads that are funded by developers, but along those roads and pre-citrus days, that was sandhill scrub habitat, right? The mountains of Florida, Lake Royals Ridge, 200-foot elevations. So now our code requires that along the roads, and we're getting there with the subdivision, the residential side of that as well here in the next month, will require all native. You can see some of it out there now. But the intent is to try to mimic and bring some of that back within the road right-of-ways as well, alongside with the trails. So a lot more to come on that. That's a whole other topic.
Awesome.
But